Hi everyone, welcome to this brand new Git and version control series. In this playlist, we'll be learning about Git from absolute basics to advanced real-world workflows used by developers, DevOps engineers, testers, and the cloud teams. Whether you are a beginner, automation tester, developer, or working in DevOps, this series will definitely help you to understand how teams manage code, track the changes, collaborate, and deploy projects efficiently using Git and GitHub. So we'll cover everything step by step with practical demos and also the interview concepts, hands-on commands, branching strategies, things like merge conflicts, pull requests, CI/CD integration, and real project scenarios. If you want to master version control and work like industry professionals, then this playlist is for you. Let's get started. So, in this series of episodes, so the first episode is the introduction and setup to Git. First, we'll try to understand what actually is Git, how to set up in your local, and what are the various concepts to get started. Okay, so the first and the foremost thing is what actually is Git and what you will be learning uh, in terms of Git and what is Git versus GitHub, the platforms and the differences, and the installation procedures on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Then the configuration procedure where we'll be configuring our name, email, and the other settings. And the next thing is the secure authentication setup, that is creating the SSH keys so that it avoids continuous logins again and again. Then the client's choice. So whether you want to use the terminal on workflow or how can we use that and what are the major differences between both. So next, first we'll try to understand what actually is Git. So basically Git is nothing but it is a version control system that tracks every change that you make to your code. So it is always important to know the history of whatever modifications we are making to our code repository. So first we'll be writing one version of code, then we'll be modifying it, then we'll be enhancing it, and then like if you want to see the history of whatever enhancements which you have made, or if you want to revert it, so Git provides that sort of flexibility to do that. So in order to get started, like what actually is distributed version control is nothing but every developer has the full project history on their machine, no single point of failure. So what does it mean by distributed version control? So basically, like multiple developers will be working on their individual branches, and the code will be merged to the common feature branch. So this is the concept of branches. So in order for every developer to maintain their own history, so there should be a system that allows to do and that allows us to track the history and to work in parallel so that every developer can make their own changes, then collaborate. Like for example, there will be one code base and there will be multiple developers who will be working on that code base. And for example, in case, see, it is a common human error prone to errors. So in order to undo those mistakes, whatever we done, or for example, if some of the code is deleted, if you want to recover those code, so all these things is being provided by Git. So that's the reason we need to use some kind of version control system to avoid all these disadvantages, whatever we will be getting. For example, track history, working in parallel, collaboration among multiple developers, and working on one code base. Then, like undoing mistakes and recovering the failure mechanisms, and recovering the lost work. Cool. So this is the basic introduction to Git. Then let us try to understand, for example, a system that has a version control, a system that doesn't have a version control. In this case, whenever we say version control, we are definitely pointing to Git. So first we'll try to understand what are the disadvantages of the things without version control. So normally what we'll be doing, we'll be creating multiple files and you will be zipping that particular file into one common archive. So that is how it looks like. Then there won't be any history. So for example, you have modified a file 100 times. So you won't be knowing the changes that you made second time, third time, 50th time, 75th time. These kind of changes you won't be able to see without the version control. Then there is no way to collaborate without overwriting. So for example, I am writing some code, and if I pass the same code to some other developer, he will be modifying the existing one. Okay, so it means like he will be he will be overwriting. But that's not our goal. We want the changes that are made by both the developers, correct? So these kind of things are not present if you don't have the version control. And for example, if there are mistakes happened, so it's not easy to undo. Okay, so for example, if you have developed a complete project and if there are mistakes, so there is no way to revert that code unless and until you do it manually, which is again a tedious process. And for example, there are multiple files and which occupies more space, and emailing and zipping those files and sending through the mail so that the other developer can work it is again a tedious process. So all these disadvantages which you are seeing on the left is being avoided on the things that are in the right side, that is a system that has a version control or Git. So every commit has a snapshot. For example, if you want to see what the commit has what version of the code, you can see that. Then you will be having the full history with the author and the message. This is one of the main important feature. So for example, there are 4 developers working on it and the third developer has committed a mistake. Okay, so if you go to the history, you will be seeing the details like what is the commit ID, what are the changes, and who is the developer, and what is the change that is being made by giving a meaningful message. And branches isolate and we can work safely. So basically everyone has their own branch. There is no dependency like this branch needs to be pushed, then only we can work on this another branch. It's not like that. Every developer has their individual branches which they can work on their feature. Once the feature development is done, it will be merged to one common branch. Then the next important feature is rollback to any past state instantly. What does this mean? For example, there are like 10 versions of the code, as I said, 10 snapshots in this case. For example, if you want to revert to something to the fifth snapshot, so this kind of rollback flexibility is being provided by Git. At any point of time, you can roll back to any of the commit ID and pushing to the remote and share it to anyone. Like I said, emailing zips with has the more memory. It is really a tedious process. Instead, what we can do is we can push it to some remote branch and you can just share that link with whatever the developer who wants to take control of that code and who want to enhance it. So this kind of flexibility is also there when we use the version control. Then in the next concept, we will try to understand what is Git versus GitHub and what are the differences. Most people who is new to Git, they often get confused like both are same, but both are not same. What actually is Git and what actually is GitHub, we'll try to understand. So first of all, in short, Git is nothing but it is a version control software or you can call it as version control client. Then the next we have GitHub on the other side, which is a hosting platform for Git repos. So what does this mean, hosting platform? So for example, we will be making some modifications in your local using Git and you will be pushing that code to the GitHub. In the future lectures, we will also covering how we will be doing all those push operations and so on. So then like we will be looking at what actually is GitHub and how do we also host it for various Git repos. So first we'll try to understand what actually is Git. So basically it runs on your computer. When we say computer, it is our local system where we'll be installing the Git client and we'll start working with our changes. Then tracks changes locally. So whatever changes you made it locally, so Git provides that flexibility to track all the changes before actually pushing it to the GitHub. Then it is also an open source command line tool, which is nothing but we'll be entering a series of commands. And also this software is available for free in the market. You can just download it and you can install it. And works fully offline. So you need not have an internet connection to work with Git. So you can just make your changes like whenever you want to push, you can just activate your internet connection or whenever it is there you can directly push it to the GitHub. So it means like having internet is not a mandatory thing, it's an optional thing for working with Git. Then on the other side, we have GitHub. what actually is GitHub? So basically, it's a cloud-based website. So when we say cloud-based website, it is a kind of storage where we'll be storing all our repos. So in the coming lectures, we'll also be seeing how to create the repos and work with it. Then, as I said, it stores your remote repos. So whatever changes you make in your local branch, once you push it to your remote branch, like it will be stored. Then it also adds the collaboration features. So for example, developer one has created one version of the code, and he will be pushing that code to the remote branch, and if they want to merge it, they cannot directly do it. So in order to do that, they will be creating a PR, which means like pull request. And once the pull request is raised, the developer will be reviewing that code and he'll be suggesting the changes. So this part of collaboration feature is also provided by GitHub. And coming to the ownership, it is owned by Microsoft. So hope you got the differences between Git and GitHub. In short, it is a version control software, and whereas GitHub is nothing but hosting platform for various Git repos. So then we have the procedure. So in the coming lectures, we will also be seeing how to install it practically on various operating systems. But so you can just download the installer from this particular website, and you just need to run the setup. That's it. So this is how you'll be installing on Windows. When it comes to Mac, you can use Brew as a utility, and or you can also use Xcode command line tools in order to install with the Git. Then coming to Linux, you can use sudo apt. So based on the flavor of your Linux operating system, you can use its corresponding commands, and which is easy to install. So for Debian and Ubuntu based systems, it is sudo apt install git, and Fedora and Red Hat Linux based systems, it is sudo dnf install git. And once the installation is done, so in order to verify that git installation is successful, you just need to run this particular command, git space hyphen hyphen version, and it will print you with the version of that git that is being installed in that system. Okay, so this is all about installing git. In the coming lectures, we will also be looking at how to install it. So these are some of the hands-on commands which you can try after installing the Git. So for example, if you open Git Bash and type in git space hyphen hyphen version, it will show you with the version of Git that is being installed. And if you want to see the location where the Git got installed, so this is the command which you can use, which space Git. And for example, if you want to see the list of commands which you can perform using Git, you can always go with git space help. So now you got the version, it means like you are ready to go. For example, if it says command not found, then it means like git is not installed correctly, and you can go to the sixth slide. Okay. And one of the pro tip is that it's better you can always verify or upgrade the git to the latest version. So once the Git is installed, like you need to configure your Git. It means you need to specify your identity for Git to recognize who is doing with what operations. Okay, so for example, what is the need of configuration of Git? So it means like every commit you make is signed with your name and email. That's the reason. So for example, if there is some mistake that is made by you, in order for the other developer to recognize or to track it, it is important to set up the email ID and the name, so that whatever commit you make, it will be assigned with your name. So it means this so and so person has made this so and so commit. Okay. Now these are some of the commands. So git config, then hyphen hyphen global user.name, and you can here specify your username. Okay, so for example, in this case, myself is Shiva Krishna, so you can just specify Shiva Krishna. Then in order to configure the email address, you can just go to git space config space hyphen hyphen global user dot email and your email ID. Then you can also set the default branch name. So it means like whenever you open a Git repo, it will by default point to the main branch. Okay, so this is how you will be setting git space config space minus minus global init.defaultBranch main. In some systems it will be master, in some systems it will be main. It all depends on your requirement, like how you want to name that particular default branch. Then you can also check whatever settings you have configured by using this particular command, git space config space hyphen hyphen list. So these are some of the configuration commands that you can use in order to get started with Git. Now, for example, let us try to understand what actually is this global flag, because remaining things are easy. You are setting the configuration and what configuration you are setting and what is its value. But in between there is a global flag. It means, so it applies to all the repos on your machine. So it means like, for example, whatever user or anyone who is working on this, or if they are creating multiple repos in our machine, what we can do, you can use the global setting to apply these configuration settings to all the repos. Then it's a kind of one-time setup. You need not every time whenever you are working on the code or whenever you are opening Git bash, you need not run this command. It's a kind of one-time activity and it will be saved in the Git configuration file. And use real values. So it's always preferred to use the real values rather than mock values so that it will be meaningful. Okay, so these are some of the tips in configuring Git. So next we'll be looking at how to perform the secure authentication. It means like you will be creating a key and you need not enter the password again and again. So these are the steps. So first in the local system, what you need to do is you need to generate a key pair on your machine. So it will create a public and the private key, and this is the command. So SSH minus keygen space minus t space ed25519. So this is common and constant, minus C, and you need to enter your email ID. So what it throws is it will throw you with the key where you need to copy this key into the GitHub. So how you can do that? So basically you can run this particular command to see the key. So basically whatever keygen that you are generating here, that will be stored in this particular file. You can view the contents of that particular file using the Linux cat command, and you need to copy that. So whatever output you got it, you just need to copy it and you need to add it to the GitHub. And once the addition is done, you can just test it by running a test command. So basically ssh space minus t git at the rate github.com. So once you test it, so once it is connected, like it will greet you with your name. So what is the use of SSH? As I showed you before the start of the slide, no more password prompts, more secure than HTTPS tokens, work across devices once set up. Okay, you can use with multiple devices once you set up this SSH authentication and add it to GitHub. So this is the use of SSH or secure authentication. So then basically in GitHub there are two types of authentication mechanisms. One is HTTPS and the other is SSH. It all depends on project to project and repo to repo, and like whatever you want to use, you can use that. So for example, features, we'll try to understand the differences with various constraints or parameters. First is the setup difficulty, and if you consider HTTPS, it is really easy. The setup is really easy, and SSH is nothing but like generating those keys. It's a kind of moderate compared to HTTPS. Then the authentication, it will be done using the personal access token, or you can call it as a PAT token. So you need to generate a PAT token and use it for authentication. And whereas public and private keys will be used for SSH. So in the previous slide, I have shown you right how to generate the SSH keys and add it to the GitHub repo. Then we'll be having the password prompts, and every push you need to enter your password, or if it is cache, you need not enter. And coming to SSH, once you set up this SSH authentication, you need not enter the password and again and again. And when it comes to the firewall, yes, it is firewall friendly. And SSH, there are cases like sometimes it might be blocked. So most of the organizations, in order to reduce this, they will be preferring HTTPS. And for example, if you are new to Git, then it is always prefer. It's not like you should not use SSH, but it is always preferable to use HTTPS for getting started or for beginners. And in day-to-day activities, or those who have that advanced concepts and I mean, information about the Git and GitHub and how to use that, they can use SSH for their daily use. And this is how the repo URL format looks like. So this is for HTTPS. It will be like HTTPS github.com slash who is the user and his repo name. Whereas when it comes to SSH, it will be in this format: git at the rate github.com colon username, which is the same, then this repo. So these are the basic differences in the URL formats of HTTPS and SSH. Then finally, once we did all the setup, it is on the user to know how he want to work, whether he want to use the terminal or whether he want to use the GUI kind. And what is the disadvantages and advantages of using the terminal as well as GUI clients? So first advantage of using terminal is it is the fastest once you know all the commands. The typing is easy and works the same on every OS. So irrespective of whether you are using Linux, Windows or Mac, the commands work the same way. And when it comes to tutorials, so mostly whatever tutorials you see online and also in our sessions, we'll also be using command line to get habituated with the various commands. And some of the popular actions which we can use. So if you want to use git commands CLI, then on Windows you can use git bash, which is the most popular one. And in Mac OS you can either use item2 or terminal, default terminal that is provided by Mac OS. And when it comes to Linux, you can either use console or GNOME terminal. So this is all about the terminal CLI commands. Then you do have GUI client, which is it provides the user interface. So basically, if you want to do the activities and if you want to see the visual representation of whatever you are doing, and also the history in the visual format, then in that case you can use the GUI clients. So some of the advantages is that it provides the visual representation, so which will be easy for any newbies to identify what is happening. And you can also see the side by side differences and merges, whatever you are seeing, it will be easy. And for example, if you want to learn it, if you want to understand the concepts of rebasing, for advanced concepts like rebasing, merging concepts like branch deviation, branches, how it looks like for the first time users, it is always preferable to use GUI clients. Once you get habituated with all the commands, then you can directly go for CLI terminal. So some of the popular options is you do have GitHub desktop. You can directly download it from the Google, and you also had Git Kraken, which is used. I mean, it's a pro version. You need to buy it and branch graphs. And we also have VS codes built in source control. So in our sessions, we'll be using VS Code, and I will also be explaining you how to integrate GitHub or in the Git with the Code and push it, commit it, and so on. So this is what we have done. So first we have installed the Git. Once the installation is done, you need to enter git space hyphen hyphen version to return the version number. Then as a next step, what we have done after installing, you need to configure your username and the password and set the default branch. So the command to set the username is git space config space hyphen hyphen global space user.name and space our name. Then in order to set your email ID, you can use the same command. Instead user.name, you can replace it with user.email and you can substitute your corresponding email ID. And if you want to set the default branch, then init.defaultBranch and you can set the branch name. Then as a next step, you need to create a GitHub account. So we will be installing the Git in our local system. Then we'll be setting up the GitHub account on the remote repository. And one more important thing is it is free. You can always use it to store the repositories. Then you need to generate an SSH key. So what you need to do is this is the command SSH minus keygen space minus t ed 25519 hyphen minus c and your email ID. So once the SSH key is generated, as I said, we need to add that SSH key to the GitHub. And this is the navigation. You need to go to profile, settings, SSH and GPG keys, and you need to configure that. Then in order to test the connection, you need to use SSH space -t space git@github.com. So in the next tutorial, I will also be showing you how to install and how to set all these configuration parameters, how to generate an SSH key and add the SSH key to the GitHub, and how to test the connection. So let us try to understand some basic knowledge check, like test yourself before moving on. So for example, what actually is a Git? A distributed version control system that tracks the code changes locally on your computer. One more important thing is, what is the difference between Git and GitHub? Git is the tool, GitHub is the website. The host Git repositories for storage and collaboration. Then why use --global when configuring? It applies settings to every Git repository on your machine, so you can configure only once. Why set up SSH keys? To authenticate with GitHub without typing your password on every push and more securely than tokens. That's the reason you will be setting up the SSH keys. So these are the basic knowledge check which you can do yourself before proceeding on to the Git. So that's it for this video, guys. So with this, the module 1 is completed. You are set up and ready to commit the code. Next, we'll be looking at the Git fundamentals. But before that, we'll be starting off with installing the Git and configuring Git and also setting up the GitHub repository. Thank you.